Recently I got myself a new computer, this M4 Mac Mini here. While I was setting that up, I tried to take the time to organise my workspace a little bit. While I was thinking about that, I remembered that somewhere in the depths of the loft I had this thing, which is a patch bay. It's the Behringer Ultra Patch Pro PX2000, and it just allows you to patch different hardware and route things into different places, and it's quite useful. I actually got this when I went to buy this Focusrite Sapphire Pro 40 interface. At the time I really didn't have a use for it, but I do have a few items that I can plug into it now. Not only would it give me some flexibility with the gear that I already have, I feel like it would sort of future-proof me in a way if I do get any more outboard gear. What I would like to do though is I would like to actually build a rack mount unit for these two items. I'm thinking of doing a 3U rack mount, so that would be for 3 units. I only have 2 at the moment, but it would give me some space for an additional one if I ever get something else. And that kind of quite neatly fits into this monitor riser that I built a while ago and recently modified. Now I was going to order some rack mount hardware, but it was going to be about 15 quid, and you know, I've got some of this which is just angled aluminium. So yeah, I'm thinking about building a little rack mount unit for these bits of hardware, and I thought I might as well film the process and let you guys tag along. Oh, that wasn't too terrible. It was pretty bad, but...
So to start this project off, I am using some offcuts of 2x4 or whatever the metric equivalent is, and I'm just planing 2 of the faces down flat and hopefully perpendicular.
Bit in the middle. Pretty good.
So once I have 2 faces flat, level and square to each other, I can square up one of the ends, which is not all that easy even with a very sharp plane iron. And then I can get to flattening the other faces to hopefully end up with a fairly square and symmetrical piece of wood. So much better now I've cleaned the blade. Cleaned the blade, sharpened the blade, stropped it even. Now I know that the rack units are 19 inches wide by whatever the other dimension is. And I think that meant that I needed to have each of these blocks be about 2¼ inches wide to give me the necessary 19-inch spacing, or just a fraction over, just to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room. So rather than rely on pure measurements, I decided to clamp these pieces of wood in situ and test them against the actual unit that I'm going to be installing, just to make sure I'm not making any bonehead mistakes. And I think this is good advice for anyone that's not particularly practiced at these kind of builds. It's sometimes a lot easier to work with the actual physical items that you have in front of you than on some theoretical measurements and dimensions on a piece of paper, or even worse, in your head.
So I've actually managed to cut these about 6mm too long, which is preferable to 6mm too short. Looks like I'm going to have to cut them again though.
So now that these are cut to the correct length, I can dimension them down to the correct width, checking to make sure that the unit does actually fit all the way along. And then I can remove the vinyl covering to give me a good gluing surface. Which was actually quite tricky to do. That's quite satisfying though. So the unit that I'm working on was made out of some shelves from an old desk, and it's actually made from MDF, but it has a very thin wood veneer on. So I am gluing wood to wood here with some wood glue. My wood glue's a little bit congealed, which is why I was applying it directly from the bottle. Doesn't seem to want to come out of the nozzle anymore.
Right, so this is all glued up. So I'm going to go away and let this cure. Then I can come back and take the clamps off, and I hope that I haven't overlooked something stupid.
And here I'm just cutting down that angled aluminium to close to the correct dimension. The angle grinder makes short work of this. And then I can file and grind them down until we hit the correct length. Of course, got to clean up all the sharp burrs. And there they are. And that means that I can get to marking the hole positions for these two units. Which means I can then get to drilling those out and tapping the holes. First, I'm going to mark the center position so that hopefully these all line up neatly. And then I'm just moving up through the drill sizes each time. I won't show you every step of that process. And then yes, I can tap these holes. I'm using an M6 tap. I have some M6 machine screws. They're perhaps not the ideal bolts to use for this, but they're what I have on hand. So here I'm drilling the mounting holes into the wood. I've taken the side handle off of this hand drill, which allows me to get it close enough to this case to actually drill a perpendicular hole, but it did make holding onto this while trying to drill a hole rather tricky, as you can probably tell.
Come on!
But it did the job. Now I can fit the first of these brackets.
Ah, what was that?
Try not to destroy the place in the process.
Okay, that's not perfect, but I think it's good enough.
Then I can do the same on the other side. I think I'd developed a slightly better technique the second time around.
Cool, right. Yeah, it looks like that might actually work.
Don't speak too soon.
Well, I think I would call that a success. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, so for now, I've decided I'm just going to spray paint these wooden bits black, and then maybe I can figure out some kind of face plate or covering for it.
So I'm just going to mask off all the areas that I don't want to spray. And then I can get to spraying in a very haphazard manner.
Well, that was terrible. Still, they are black now. Looks a bit like a drippy mess, but do a second coat and maybe improve it. Might make it worse.
So before anyone says, I know that this looks bad.
Looks alright, I suppose.
I think I was trying to convince myself at that point. Look how quick I can hand screw a screw.
You don't really want to watch all of this, do you? Yeah, I think that doesn't look too bad. Now I just have to figure out a plate to cover the gap. So here's the unit in situ on my desk. And it's already covered in dust. Lovely. I don't think that looks too bad, but I do want to get some kind of cover plate for this gap here. And rather than making one, I'm thinking I might just buy something. And you can get these rather funky vented cover plates. So I think I might do that. And then maybe I could put some cool LEDs or something behind there. So I think that's what I'm going to do. The rack mount panel has arrived in the post. Let's take a look.
Here comes an unboxing montage.
Hey.
It's obligatory on YouTube to have an unboxing montage at some point.
Come on. Where is that? Yeah, that actually looks pretty good quality. I'm happy with that. Now we just need to get it mounted. Okay, so we have a slight issue, and this wasn't entirely unexpected. Yeah, it doesn't fit in the gap. So I think the only thing that I can do, remove the screws that are attaching these brackets into the wood and move this whole thing down a bit, so each bracket down slightly. Okay, so there's a number of issues. I think this top panel has with all the weight that it's been supporting, has got a bow in it, like a little smiley face. We've got ever such a slight curvature, which isn't helping. There's a little bit of play on the edges, but it's touching in the middle. If I could flatten this top down, there may just be enough space to fit this in without making any other changes. I also, off camera, just loosened the fastenings and just let gravity drop them down as low as they would go, which gave me another, I don't know, fraction of a millimetre or something, which helped, but still not enough. So possibly with those two things, there might just be enough clearance to get this in. And as I say, clearance is clearance. While I've got this open and I'm working on it, I thought I might as well paint the inside black to match the outside. So I'm going to carry on and do this.
And if you're wondering, yes, I did put too much paint on.
Though it's going to start getting a little bit difficult to do it one-handed when I get to certain areas. So I'll do the rest off camera. Ooh, that was a good one. Sometimes you just need to get outside in the fresh air and let the breeze blow all those cobwebs out of the old grey matter. This is my mallet that I've never got round to putting a handle on. It still works. Got to use the appropriate size chisel for the job. Lovely jubbly. Look, scratching on my paintwork. It's not like that's going to be visible anyway. Don't move around on me. Yeah, nearly put my fingers down here. Don't want to be doing that. Definitely not. This is pretty sharp. So I have drilled some new holes in here, and using this little spacer, I've lined this up and marked where I want to drill. Now the screws, I want to use some different ones to the ones that I used before. These are sort of wood screws with a tapered underside to the head there. And I want to use something more like this, a pan head that's got a flat bottom. But these ones are a bit short and there's quite a lot of weight in the units that I'm going to be mounting. And I don't think that they're going to give me enough strength. So I may need to go and buy some more screws unless I can find some in this mess in here. Lots of screws, but not the type I need. Okay, so I've just clamped this down, glued it to flatten this out. And if that means that it gives me just enough clearance to get the units in and the cover plate without having to move these brackets, then that's going to be way easier than trying to re-drill everything and move these down. So I'm just going to try that first, and if it doesn't work, then yeah, back to the drawing board again. So, did any of you spot the glaringly obvious mistake I just made? I've already filled these holes, haven't I? So, I'm going to have to re-drill these things anyway. So I'm thinking I might as well move them down a bit, and then at least I know I'm definitely going to have clearance, rather than re-drill these holes in the exact same place, only to realise that there still isn't enough clearance and I've got to redo it all anyway. God, I hope I marked up the right one. Did I? Where is it? Here. Is this it?
I did, if you were wondering.
And nip it down. Right, one done.
God, mind your paintwork.
One to go. What I had to do, I had to drill a second hole and make an oval so that I had some sort of lateral adjustment. But that's sitting pretty flush now. Good. Okay, so I've just done the other side, whichever one it was, which went a lot smoother. I did that off camera. And they're both now fitting rather flush. Maybe that one's a hair under, but it's close enough for me. So now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bit of wood that I used as a spacer. I'm going to cut this down, and then I can paint that black. And then we can mount the other two units, and then I can check to make sure that the cover plate fits on, and then I can drill and tap some holes. Essentially, it's kind of done then. Then I just need to worry about maybe prettying up the front, maybe painting the black in here a bit more and where I scratched it. Yeah, and we're kind of there, unless I want to add some LEDs. Okay, so off camera, I've added these shims, these wooden shims on either side to raise the whole thing up so that now it's not going to be bottoming out on these brackets and scratching up my desk. I've remounted these units just to check that this cover plate will indeed fit, and I've also painted this black in here, but this does indeed fit with quite a significant gap at the top here, so but you know, it fits. That's the main thing. One other thing that I've done, I've cut out these bits of plastic from an old chopping board. What I intend to do with these is mount these in here. I might just hot glue them in possibly, and that should give me some nice diffusion for a light. So if I put some LEDs behind there, I think that should help diffuse the light, spread it over the whole length or most of it. What I'm thinking I might then do is do the wood surround, and then these parts here, I don't know what to do with that, but let's get on with it. I may not do all of this on camera. I've got too much footage as it is. Okay, so I've drilled and tapped these holes, and the cover plate is now mounted. Ordinarily, I don't really like using hot glue on projects, but I kind of want this to be removable if I ever want to change it in the future. So I figure this is a pretty reversible procedure, but it should be strong enough to just hold it in place.
Which it was until I dropped it on the concrete floor and had to redo it all again. And to make matters worse, I then put this new cover plate face down onto some sandpaper and scuffed the front, which wasn't the best. But now I can get to working on the wooden frame and make use of this piece of oak that I bought for the project.
Hello, buddy. You alright, mate? I won't be in here for too much longer. Promise. Go on. Okay, so I thought I'd respray these black areas to try and get a slightly better finish, and I've managed to do this. Lovely. The other thing I've done is I've added another sort of spacer shim on here, basically so that it's going to be easier for me to cut these to the correct depth so that it all lines up nice and flush. But yeah, I'm thinking about taking all of this paint off here and then refinishing this in another way. Oh dear, one thing after another at the moment. Oh, focus, thank you. Thankfully this is coming off fairly easily, even with one hand, I hope. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah. Okay, so off camera I have covered these exposed bits of wood using some of this leftover vinyl covering or whatever it's made from. And now I have been preparing the wooden frame, so they're more or less ready to glue in place. I'm just going to glue these in using CA glue. I think that's going to be the best option in this situation. Yeah, so I'm just going to do that.
Here I'm using the kind of medium viscosity gel super glue, which is in these kind of circumstances good because the thin stuff has a tendency to run everywhere and probably would have ruined the finish. I mean, I did a good enough job of scuffing and scratching the surface finish anyway, so I don't need any more mishaps.
Well, that went surprisingly smooth.
And then, of course, anytime you're using wood, there's the obligatory sanding. But we'll speed through this for you. Thankfully, it wasn't too much.
Right, cut.
Yeah, I finally managed to get the lid off the bottle. I thought I'd leave that little bit of footage in just for your amusement. And once this is stained up and I've cleaned the dust off, this project will pretty much be complete. And there we have it. There is my completed monitor stand, desk riser with a built-in rack unit for a patch bay and an audio interface. with some LEDs. I don't know if that's going to be the title of the video. That sounds like a bit of a mouthful. I'm going to have to come up with something a bit snappier than that. But I hope you'll agree. I think the finished result actually doesn't look too bad. There were some times during the build that I thought this was going to look a bit duff. But yeah, I think it turned out pretty well. I'll probably get some different LEDs because the ones that I'm using are incredibly bright. Although they might be quite cool for adding some ambient light for some videos. But there we are. That is the build. If you like this kind of content, please give me a like. Maybe consider subscribing to the channel. If you want to support the channel, there's some links down in the description. I would really appreciate it. But until then, take care. And I will see you again soon.